Orange juice, OJ, liquid sunshine. This is the kind of food our ancient ancestors turned to for quick energy. Today we wake up with it or wind down with it in the evening with a splash of something. But if you're a fan of OJ or oranges or citrus in general, you might want to listen up, because in just a few years, it might all be gone. Come on, let me take you where the food comes from. I'm in deep South Florida. I'm on the southwest shores of Lake Okeechobee. This is an experimental citrus grove. Over the last 15 years, a lethal disease called citrus greening. They call it Huanglongbing, HLB. It's devastated the Florida citrus crop. We've gone from a high of about 900,000 acres of Florida citrus land to today's count of about 400,000. There's no cure for citrus greening, but people are hard at work looking for it. The solution to the problem might be in these very fields. Believe it or not, this little guy might have made a powerful ally in spinach. But before I tell you about that, let me tell you a little more about the problem. So I guess really the most basic question is, what is HLB? Is this a bacteria? Is it a virus? Is it a bug? Is it an alien from another planet? What is that?
Yeah, so the official name of the disease is Huanglongbing, which means yellow shoot disease. Citrus greening. It was called greening because we noticed that the fruit are orange on the top and green on the bottom. So some people in English started calling it greening. It's caused by a bacteria, and that bacterium is vectored, is moved about by an insect called the Asian citrus psyllid. And that insect is a probing insect. He's got a long proboscis, like a straw, and he pokes it into the young tender shoots. And he gets into this phloem tissue. And as he's feeding, he's injecting in and out, injecting this bacteria.
Literally the same way a mosquito lands on you and pokes his nose in to tap into your bloodstream.
Right, and if he's carrying the malaria parasite,
then you have it.
Boom, it's the same sort of thing.
So we keep talking about this in the orange crop. Is it an orange specific disease, or is this greening disease, can it affect all kinds of citrus?
Greening disease affects all kinds of citrus. There is no citrus that is absolutely immune to citrus greening disease. It affects different kinds of citrus in greater or lesser degrees. Oranges are sensitive. Grapefruit are super sensitive. The problem with this disease is that once the bacteria is injected into the tree, you don't recognize immediately that the tree has a problem. What you can see behind is a collection of citrus trees. This is what we call the variety block. It's actually a collection of many different kinds of citrus, a broad range of all the genetic variation that exists. And what you'll see are some trees that look reasonably healthy. You'll see other trees that look quite unhealthy, and you'll see a lot of empty spots. So this is what happened, if you will, after the wave of HLB washed across this particular part of the world. This row is where we have a number of different grapefruit varieties. Grapefruit should not look like this. Grapefruit is a big, healthy, vigorous tree. It should be dark green with nice, large fruit. What you see is a lot of small fruit, a lot of dead fruit on the ground. You can see the limbs and the trunk of the tree. You're not supposed to see that on a citrus tree. Big and green and round all the year long. There are classical symptoms of HLB, including limb dieback. You can see the blotchy mottle, the small leaves. I'm looking for a leaf that's not affected. Here we go. So, I mean, this is what a normal leaf should look like, and we're seeing all of these kinds of odd things. I think you can see all the mottling of the leaves, the yellow and the green all mixed together. So a tree that's infected but hasn't succumbed yet, still going.
Hi, I'm Chef Holly Shute with Georgia Grown and the Georgia Department of Agriculture. Today we're going to be showcasing sweet Georgia Vidalia onions. We're going to be making a Vidalia onion and collard green dip. Take a couple of tablespoons of butter. And we've got some diced Vidalia onions. Just going to cook them until they wilt a little bit. Got a little bit of salt and pepper. We're going to add chopped collard greens. These are Baker Farms collard greens from Norman Park, Georgia. And again, we're just going to wilt these barely because this is going to go in the oven to finish cooking. And to that, we're going to add some cream cheese, some mayonnaise. You can add some hot sauce into that, grated Swiss cheese, and some fresh Parmesan cheese. We're going to put that in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes until it's nice and golden. Yeah, that's good.
Vidalia onions, hand-planted, hand-picked by chefs.
Florida citrus is an $8 billion a year industry. Now, over the last decade, they've lost about $1 billion a year in annual revenues to greening. It won't stop in Florida. The bug is already in Texas and California, though the infection hasn't run rampant. So the question is, how did the Asian citrus psyllid make it into the United States? People don't realize the pivotal role that America's ports play in our food supply system, and not just in this country, around the world. Thousands of ships, billions of tons of cargo, a lot of that perishable. Any food that's being exported from this country, most of it that's being imported to this country, is all arriving by water. As a whole, the ports do an amazing job protecting food security and security in general, but it's a very big net to cast. Sometimes things can slip through. Port Everglades is the perishables leader, I believe, certainly on the East Coast.
In the state of Florida, we're number 1. We're number 5 in the country for perishable products moving through the port. And that is because our unique location in South Florida.
What kind of tonnage does Port Everglades handle just in perishable cargo in a typical year?
Well, in perishable commodities, about 1.5 million tons.
1.5 million tons of perishable food. There could not be too many people in the United States who have the job title harbor master.
No, and our position's kind of different because mostly harbor masters, a lot of other ports it's really a different animal, whereas we really just manage all the ship traffic, we coordinate all the movements of the ships, we coordinate the tugboats, the pilots, the line handlers, we schedule the traffic, and we also say what boats are going to go where.
Really, it's like an air traffic control tower.
It is, but for ships. And the difference being is the ships move slower, okay? But when the ships hit stuff, they do a whole lot of damage.
What are the red triangles?
Every one of those is a commercial ship.
Every one of these red triangles is a ship somewhere off the coast of Florida.
Yep.
All of these ships that are around us, they all have a purpose. Nobody just loads a ship somewhere and says, hey, let's go to Port Everglades.
Right.
This is all, the planning for all of this starts days, weeks, months ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly.
That perishable cargo is literally nonstop around the clock. There's something coming and going every day.
Oh yeah, we are pretty packed busy just about every day of the week. Our Southport, which is where all our gantry cranes are, we almost hardly ever have an empty dock.
How does that process, what are the steps in the process of getting that ship unloaded and getting that food out into the supply chain?
Well, actually, the clearance process starts before the ship gets here. The manifest is sent to U.S. Customs in advance, and it's
that's
reviewed.
Telling people what is on board the ship and the declarations, and we're bringing in a ship full of bananas.
And it's not just the bananas, it's where the bananas came from, because there may be pests that are unique to a certain location that are not in another location. So as they target the limited government resources they have to look at the containers, they target their resources to the highest risk containers. the container comes off. There are inspection docks at each of the terminals that are designed to be able to allow the customs officers to safely open the container, look inside and inspect and determine whether any additional treatment is needed.
So they'll make sure that it is what it's supposed to be, and then they're also digging those layers deeper. I think it's what they're really looking for more than anything is bugs or disease that might enter this country unwarily.
Yes, and that's their role, is verifying that there are no pests. If there are pests, then determining what can be done and determine, does it pose a risk to the United States.
So really, with this kind of traffic coming and going, security has got to be your first and foremost issue.
Yes, it is. About a third of our operating budget actually goes to security here at the port. We need to ensure that the operations here at the port are safe and secure. We need to ensure that the passengers, because we're talking about perishables today, but we're also the third largest cruise port in the world. Mm-hmm. So we have almost 4 million people who pass through this port every year, and we need to make sure that they're safe and secure as they get on and off their cruise ships.
My family grows North Carolina sweet potatoes.
My family grows North Carolina sweet potatoes.
My family grows North Carolina sweet potatoes.
My family grows North Carolina sweet potatoes. In fact, over 2/3 of all sweet potatoes produced in America are grown in North Carolina.
So we know what we're doing.
At the North Carolina Sweet Potato Commission, we know that sweet potato is spelled as one word. Not sure about that? Check it out.
Our family grows North Carolina sweet potatoes, but Mom liked me best.
Today we're going to be featuring Baker Farms collard greens. We're making a frittata. We've got some colored peppers, some onions, with a little bit of salt and pepper, roasted potatoes, collard greens, eggs with some half and half, cayenne pepper, smoked paprika, the salt and pepper, fresh basil. Pour those eggs on top, add some feta cheese, and pop that in the oven to 350 degrees until the eggs are just set and we got some nice bubbling feta cheese.
We would like to think that we could take a big protective dome and put it over the United States
We would like
and
to have that.
keep out bad people, bad bugs, bad diseases, everything like that. Let's talk about some of the ways that that bug could have entered this country.
We're not exactly sure how the psyllids got here, but I think there are a number of people who feel that through some tropical storm movements from the Caribbean, South America, that they were blown up here. We certainly know that human beings carry things besides Ebola and the flu and so on. They bring seeds and bud sticks and all sorts of things when they travel to different parts of the world, and you know it's against the law, but so many people do it. I think a few years ago there was a study in the Miami airport. They just inspected all the luggage on one airplane, and there were like 25 or 30 violations, you know, for importing illegal plant material or animals. That's what we do as human beings, and I think there's a disconnect between most people in recognizing the threat that holds for our agricultural production systems. We have systems set up to catch things, but they're not perfect. We don't have that dome that you're talking about that's going to prevent everything and anything from getting in, and so globally, that's what we're doing as a species.
Citrus greening disease, the little Asian citrus psyllid that spreads that, came into this country somehow. It's impossible for us to say, was that aboard a shipment of fruit? Did that come in through a port? Did that come in through an orange in someone's purse that they shouldn't have brought back in on the airplane?
No, and that's why the process that's in place, I think the regulatory environment that exists, is a layered approach. It's to reduce and minimize the risk. Just like when we talk about security at a port, the most secure port is the one that has no business. So it's a balance, and that's the same thing that those federal agencies and state agencies here in the state of Florida focus on, is finding that balance of ensuring that that perishable product, by the time it gets to your table, the risk of it creating a problem either in your house or in your community is as low as it reasonably can be.
Some people have said it might have originated on very distant relatives of citrus that exist in Africa. It was first described in China in the early 1900s. So it's been in Asia at least, more than 100 years. And in China, with a different social system, a different governmental system, the government can come in and say, okay, we're just cutting everything down and then we're going to replant. You're not going to do that in Florida. That was not an option. And so as a consequence, they're replanting in different areas in China and continuing to produce, and we're stuck with learning how to live with it. And that's what we're doing. We're learning how to live with it.
Some family farms have gone away, others have diversified. We traveled to Bradenton's mixing farms to see how one has survived. Dean, there have been mixins growing citrus on this land for well over a century.
Yep.
When did this all get started? When did your family, the first mixing family member, say, this is mine and this is what I'm going to do?
My grandfather moved here in 1917 after the First World War. He was in the First World War. And he didn't actually start right here, but he was taking care of this fruit and grows for somebody else at the time. And over the years, we've been able to buy it and it became ours. So.
Your peak was about 350 acres of groves?
350 acres, all contiguous except for one block. It was in the early 90s. We had just planted a grove and just got it going to where it was producing trees about like the one behind us here, and had a great crop on it. And they came in and found it and said we couldn't use any of it, and we had to burn it all. I remember never seen my dad cry. I saw it after that, and so that was the beginning of it. And then all of our trees, we had trees that were planted in 1849 and still producing at that time, and we've lost all of our mature trees. We don't have a single tree here. It's over 15 years old now, and what used to be a good-sized 15-year-old tree is stunted. They don't grow.
So everybody else sold out, you stayed.
Right.
We can look around your groves and we see the subdivisions, we see the homes, we see the baseball stadium down the road. You stayed. What made you stay?
Well, I've like I said before, I was always in it. I've worked all my life, and we're strong in our faith, and we pray about it, and come walk the groves and say, well, let's hang in there a little bit longer. We may not be all citrus. We'll keep the citrus theme as much as we can and keep as much citrus as we can, but we're going to have to do other things, and that's when we decided to diversify into we have a large event area here now, weddings and corporate events. In the past few years, we've planted other crops, different things, fermented different things to see what could go in there, because we know if this doesn't improve, these trees are going to be either pushed out for another crop or they're planting houses or something like that.
Try something else like this bamboo operation that you've gotten established here.
Yeah, we're 3 years into that. We haven't got any money off of it yet, but we're hoping that this year we're going to have our first crop. So it's new to us, and I like to say we are experts, but we are because we're the only ones that were doing it for a while. We're still learning. We're going to try to stay in it as long as we can. And unfortunately, I don't have kids or anybody coming along, so that decision's coming down the road somewhere. There's just something about freshly turned ground, the smell of it, and the fact that you're doing something and working in God's country and doing whatever has to be done to make it work. There's a real satisfaction. It's hard to explain for someone that's never been around that, but it gets ingrained in you.
Just as I grew up watching my dad in the farm supply business and being a farmer and just being in all things agriculture, just 24/7, 365, immersed in it. And you grew up and you see that, and it makes an impact on you. That was a big part of what encouraged me to come back home from college and stay in agriculture and just growing up in it. So our boys, are growing up. They're in college. They've been in and around produce, Vidalia onions, all their life. And I'm very optimistic and hopeful that it's made an impression on them. And as a second generation Vidalia onion grower, packer, shipper, I'm hopeful that my two boys come back into the family business and become third generation.
At Red Sun Farms, we understand how important it is to know where your food comes from. Our master growers select the very best non-GMO seeds to propagate and harvest in our high-tech greenhouses. Our farms are home to different varieties of tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers in both conventional and organic formats. Whether you're enjoying produce from our farms in Mexico, the USA, or Canada, your family will be enjoying the highest quality and most flavorful produce year-round. When you buy from Red Sun Farms, you will experience our seed-to-plate difference.
From North Carolina's mountains to the sea, when it comes to selecting and serving the best local foods and produce for you and your family, it's got to be NC.
Many people have the idea that citrus greening is a fatal disease. The reality is, it's not quite fatal. The trees go into decline. They go into a very severe decline. You'll see dieback in parts of the tree, but almost any tree can kind of just hang in there. You wouldn't recognize it as a tree that's producing anything of value. So what usually happens then is the farmers stop irrigating and they stop fertilizing and they stop killing the weeds and they stop taking care. At that point, yeah, the tree's going to die.
You know, we all get a cold, have a fever, feel bad and we don't know what's wrong with us, and we go to a doctor and we all have an expectation when we go to the doctor, he's gonna say, yeah, I got this, here, take this pill, let me give you a shot, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sense that in the early days when HLB first started showing up in Florida and people started hearing what a problem it could be, that farmers maybe expected or were hopeful of, I guess, a magic bullet that was gonna be the cure for citrus greening.
Yeah, that was the hope. That's still the hope. There are a lot of us in the scientific research community that continue to look for silver bullets, but that could be, you know, the search for the Holy Grail, and you may not ever get there. So you have farmers going out of business, packing houses closing, juice factories closing, people losing jobs. It's a big, big deal, and we have to do something in the meantime until we can find a silver bullet. Where we've gone in the past several years, the past recent years, has been a focus on root health and managing the soil chemistry. We've gone from an industry where we throw out fertilizer 3 times a year and let it wash in, so you have a feast or famine situation in the soil, to an industry that's focused on fertigation on a daily basis in some places.
And that's literally computer controlled, drop by drop, giving the tree what it needs when it needs it.
Through the water that you're using to irrigate the tree. That's it exactly. So growers are doing all of this sort of thing to maximize the ability of the tree to take up nutrients. And by doing that, they've gone in some cases from like 100 boxes to the acre back up to 300, 350 boxes to the acre. They've also seen the quality of the fruit improve somewhat. It's not back to where we were before greening, not hardly. But when you're in a war, in a struggle for your existence, you take what you can get, and if things are getting better, you're going to take that.
Next time on Where the Food Comes From, the conclusion of Deadline Florida Citrus. We'll meet a Frenchman who's working hard to save Florida's heirloom citrus industry. We'll visit some farmers who are actually growing citrus in giant screened enclosures bigger than football fields. And we'll finally tell you just how spinach might save an industry.
We are a member-driven nonprofit association of leaders from all facets of the produce industry.
Formed more than 20 years ago, we continue to promote the value of fresh fruits and vegetables in the Southeast through networking, innovation, community, and education.
Today, we are a thriving organization who continues to share and pursue our vision, mission, values, and goals.
We are the Southeast Produce Council.
When you purchase Georgia-grown products, you support farmers, families, and this proud state we call home. Together, we will keep Georgia growing.